Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. This is our September webinar on Domino SSL implementation and renewal, a survivor's guide with Avery Shaffer from Prominic. So let's jump right into it. I'm gonna go to the next slide. So basically our agenda, we'll do a quick welcome here, and then we'll get the presentation, and then we'll actually do Q&A and have some notes about Q&A in a second. We want to start by saying thank you to our sponsors of OpenNTF. That would be HCL and Prominic, both from a funding and a services and support and hosting standpoint. So thank you very much to both of those organizations for supporting the community. And as we always talk about the community, I made a point at Collabsphere when we were speaking that, you know, OpenNTF isn't the board. It isn't the volunteers that run the organization. It's the entire community. We're all part of it. You're part of it just from coming in and attending this webinar. And we encourage people to participate because when people participate, we learn from each other. Avery was just making a note about that here, about the slides that he's going to present, that they are going to present, sorry. So again, anybody that participates in the community, share what you know. That's how we all learn. And to that, or on that note, we have a event that we kicked off at Collabsphere that we're calling our blogathon. It's for, you know, kind of the fall and the winter. And the idea is to get back to this notion of sharing what you know, whether it's through a blog or if you want to just create a video or do some documentation or something, some way that you've solved a problem. I'm not sure, but you know, the best example of this is in terms of sharing what you know is kind of taking that initiative. And many people will know David Leedy, who started Notes in 9 14 years ago, and that was all his own thing, all his own doing, and he just ended up making YouTube videos about X pages and shared them with the community. It became a huge thing, and he pulled a lot of people in, including myself, to do videos on his blog. So it's kind of fun because you really never know what might happen. And if anything else, and Paul Withers has reminded me of this numerous times, writing things down on your own blog may end up being the thing that you find in a Google search years from now when you run into the same problem again. So it's more a matter of just reminding yourself of the things that you came across and how to solve a particular problem. Anyway, for people who would like to participate, you know, author your blog and then post it up. OpenNTF Discord has a new channel called Blogathon, and we'll take it from there and post it up to Collaboration Today and make sure that the message gets out. Anybody that does share their blogs, we've got OpenNTF badges. And a quick note about if you're not familiar with the HCL Ambassadors Program, blogging is one of the ways to qualify to be recognized as an HCL Ambassador. Again, whether that's written or video or otherwise. And if you don't have a blog but would like to write something and share it with the community, by all means get in touch with us. OpenNTF has a blog, and we will be happy to take your post and post it up there. So start thinking about it and see if there's something that you'd like to share. If you're not connected to our Discord server yet, take a quick shot of this QR code and it will take you to the page on the OpenNTF site that links you up with the Discord server, and then you'll be able to see other forums and conversation in the community, as well as, like I say, the new blogathon channel. For upcoming events, we've got a Repair Cafe next week, this same time slot. A week from now. And just a reminder, the repair cafes are really a place to kind of come and hang out face to face. It's for an hour. And if you got a question or a problem or a topic to discuss and share ideas, we did the developer repair cafe last week and ended up talking about classes in LotusScript and some of the challenges around using classes in LotusScript. And it was really interesting because it was only a couple of us, but what came out of it was some links back to some presentations from Lotusphere's past. And some good reference material that's still relevant today. So bring your topic and share your ideas. Again, this will be more of an admin-focused Repair Cafe next week, but we do hold an admin topics and dev topics separate Repair Cafe each month. and you can find more information about that on the Discord server. Our next webinar is in October. We're going to have a presentation on HCL Domino Leap with Marty Lechleiter. In November, we're going to do same time 12. And then in December, we host a kind of just a community gathering and just kind of celebrate the season and see each other and raise a glass. So those are the next few things that are coming up. All right, we'll get ready for the presentation here. A reminder that there is a questions pane in the GoToWebinar panel that's on your screen. That's the place to type in your question. The kind of quick and easy ones we'll answer, but generally the stuff that we're going to save for Avery will hold till the end, and then we can talk them through question and answer out loud so that they get recorded into the video, and then they'll be available on YouTube following. And if we run out of time for questions, we'll keep the entire list of questions and type them out, questions and answers, and then post them on our website as well. All of that stuff you can see on the webinars page, which is at openntf.org/webinars. And if you have other questions that you'd like to ask, you can also do that on our Discord server. A reminder that we want to keep the questions specific to the presentation today. So if you want to ask about the future of Domino Designer, that's not an appropriate question for, in fact, that's not an appropriate question for OpenNTF, that's a question for HCL. But anyway, we want to keep the topics or the questions on the current topic. All right, and with that, I am going to switch it over now to Avery so that you can do your presentation. Let me just switch presenter. There you go. Over to you.
All right, make sure I have the right screen. All right, does that look good?
That looks good.
Awesome. Okay, so who am I? Why am I here? All good questions. Some I can't answer, but this I can. So I'm a senior systems administrator at Prominic, and I am the primary certificate wrangler or handler. I've been a Domino administrator on and off since 2012. And I am, a personal thing about me is I am a local filer performer where I live. And so that's me doing the thing. That's kind of what I do in my spare time to stay sane. It's a lot of fun. Why are SSL such a pain now? So what I'm going over today is just kind of a brain dump of what I've learned handling SSLs on everything from Domino 9 to Domino 12. I'm very open to feedback since this is my very first presentation ever, so very exciting, but also very scary. But that's kind of what this is it's just me trying to share what I've learned. And so if you learn one thing from here and everything else you already know, that's my goal is complete. So why are SSL such a pain now? Essentially what happened was we realized that we needed higher security. We needed the, apologies, it's 10 a.m. We needed to, we had all of these security measures that were coming into play rather quickly because of cybersecurity and cyber attacks becoming more frequently in the early and mid-aughts. So they, the certificate and browser forums were like, okay, we need to do something about this. So in 2015, they reduced the certificate validity from 5 years to 3 years. And then in 2019, they tried to vote again to reduce it to 1 year, but that vote failed. And then Apple decided to do it just themselves. And as we all know, when a major team such as that decides that they're going to do it, then kind of everyone has to follow suit. That is why something that's kind of coming down the pipeline that we all want to be aware of is Google is now trying to push for 90-day SSL key expiration, and they're trying to do that by the end of 2024, which is the other reason I kind of wanted to do this presentation, because that's a little disconcerting, especially if you're doing currently a purchased SSL. Changing it every 90 days is a pain, especially if you have a larger environment. So how can we solve this problem? How can we be prepared for this change in the future? But that's kind of why everyone, I know a lot of customers that I've dealt with are like, you know, why do I have to change this every year now? You know, this used to be something that I would sit and forget for 3 to 5 years, and this is essentially why it was security changes were happening so quickly. We needed to beef up our environments to prevent all of these new threats. And so this was one of the solutions. SSL key name structure is another thing. So uniformity is important when updating your SSL keys. I've encountered a lot of people who want to change whenever they make a key to have it, be say 2023 or 2024. The downside to constantly changing the name of your .kyr whenever you install it is you have to change it in so many places. And if you miss one, you can break your mail, you can break your website, you can break, your outbound security. So there's really no security benefit on constantly changing the name of your key files. I personally won't see it as being useful for it to be more uniform in this situation. So that's kind of why I put this slide in here, is just to state if you are manually creating your key files, if you're buying them and things, there's no added security to change it constantly. You can just keep it the same name and then just plop it in, restart HTTP, and you're good to go. SSL purchases and renewals. How does that kind of work? What are the costs and benefits of kind of our different options we have now? So there's Let's Encrypt and there's a paid SSL for Domino. So what is the pros and cons of Let's Encrypt? It's free, which is amazing, especially for smaller companies who can't really pay that, $50 to $150 for that SSL key every year now. It also updates automatically, fingers crossed. It generates the KYR format, or for Cert Manager, it does not use the KYR format anymore. It is saved in memory, which is really, really cool. You set it up and go. As I said, it's a one-stop shop. You set everything up and you're good to go. Wildcard support is there as well, which is very useful because wildcards are, again, expensive. So that free and not needing to update it is great. The cons, no warranty protection. So if you can prove without a shadow of a doubt that your website was hacked because of the SSL, that's something that you're going to have to deal with. You're going to have to eat that cost because there is no warranty protecting it. It only has domain validation level certificates for certificates only. I personally haven't really encountered a security audit that requires the higher level of certificates, but if that's something that your security team really cares about, Let's Encrypt might not cover that requirement. So it's something good to know. We have encountered some incomplete chain issues with certain Java applications. Essentially, it's not serving up all pieces of the intermediate certificate and causes some to break. If you want more information on that, that's a question that I'll have to answer later because I would have to talk to our developers a little bit more to get the exact details for you guys. It also requires port 80 to be open in many cases, but not all. This is a part of the presentation I wanted to kind of update, but I was asked to do this a little on the quicker side to help cover, so I haven't gotten that placed into these slides yet, but stay tuned because I do want to cover that in future iterations of this presentation. That did not work. Yay, there we go. Paid certificates. What are the pros and cons? Higher validation levels. So if for some reason your security team cares about the OV and EV, it covers those. And so that's organization level certificate validation. And essentially there's just a lot more steps you have to do to prove that this SSL key is owned by that company whenever you create it. It comes with warranty. So if you can prove without a shadow of a doubt that your SSL key is why your website got hacked, there is some money in it that you can get. The full certificate chain is provided, so you get every single piece from that in a nice little bundled package. You can do whatever you want with. It makes it a little easier to build different keys depending. Site seal to reassure your visitors. If that is important to you, you can put a little site seal on your website at the very bottom, kind of like Norton or anything else, saying that our SSL key was bought by a trusted vendor. And then no port validation needed. Again, with Cert Manager and Let's Encrypt, there are ways around that I can cover in future iterations. But for most setup and goes, there is a port validation required. The cons, it costs money. And in this day and age, there's not a lot of that to go around, especially for smaller businesses. So, and you must convert the keys yourself. So you just get the certificates and you have to create the .kyr or the .pim or anything else manually. It's only valid for 1 year and soon possibly 90 days, and it requires manual validation. So you have to physically go in, check your email or update your DNS to get the certificate every single year. So that requires you to physically do something, unlike Cert Manager and Let's Encrypt, where it does it automatically. Purchased SSLs, what we're going to go over. So where can you get purchased SSLs? There's a couple different places. I've had several people get it from their DNS registrar, which can be really useful if it hosts your website as well. So you can talk to them and see if they do SSLPs, because a lot of them will just install your updated certificate for you on your website. So that's a step you don't have to do. And then you can take that key and give it to either your provider, whoever hosts your Domino, such as us, or you can make your keys yourself. And they also can do kind of the whole process for you. They can generate the CSR and the .key, which in other situations you have to do yourself. So you have to have a software or some sort of service that makes the CSR and key for you. SSL specialty sites, these are the ones that you would have to generate the CSR and the .key. And that's the certificate signing request. So you put it in and it has just a tiny snippet of your .key that would create the certificates for you, and then they send it over. And you can pay extra for installation assistance. They do offer that. I have not tested their knowledge if they can make a .kyr and install it on your Domino server. So your mileage may vary. I would be surprised if they knew how to do that process, but it's possible. And then you have your managed hosting providers such as Prominic, who can handle the whole process at an extra cost. I know that we can do everything from start to finish for you, as well as I'm sure a few other managed hosting providers who have that knowledge. You can also request different certificates. So this is just kind of an extra cool thing. Like if you asked for me to create certificates and you're like, oh, I also want it in a PIM format and PFX, if you don't mind. And I can create all of that and send it to you in one little zip file. Good to go. Generating your .csrs and .keys, how can we do it? Well, here's two ways. Server certificate administration, I've still seen people use the server certificate administrator. I do not recommend it. It is not being updated anymore. It only supports key sizes, or it doesn't support key sizes above 2048. And I've had to help many customers find the .key because it's kind of buried in the Domino server, and you need that in order to make different keys. So it will make the .kyr for you, which is really nice, and that's all you need. But if you also need like a PIM key or a PFX key for like a web server, you have to have that .key. And if it's buried in your Domino server, we have to go find it, or we can't make those other things. It's not available in modern Domino installations. So if you're using it, I would recommend moving away to something else, because again, it's not being updated anymore and you're gonna make unsecure keys. OpenSSL is a recommendation. It's free, it's continuously updated, supports the modern key sizes, can generate the keys you need, and I provided a knowledge base article for you to learn more about that if you are interested. Again, this is just kind of an overview. If I find that a lot of people really want more in-depth knowledge on specific things, I can look into, but this is just kind of showing you what's out there, not going super in-depth into what you can do with these different items. Consistent validation. So if you decide to do a paid key and you want to be able to confirm through an email. One thing that I have done that has saved a lot of headaches is instead of having it go to a specific administrator, I have it go to a generic domain email, and then I either create a mail-in database. And the reason I do that is because that is way easier than constantly having to update who gets this mail if you have rotating people in the company, or someone changes their last name and then all of a sudden that email is no longer valid, things like that. So if you do a generic one, then you can either copy and paste it on the person document. If you really want it to go to a certain person, you can just move it to whoever's in charge of updating your SSL key. Or me personally, I have it go into a mail-in database. I think it's much more handy because then you can just change who has access to that database. You can have multiple people have access to that database if needed and validate your SSL keys that way. It's just an extra tip if you're struggling with getting your email validations for your keys. Installation of purchased keys. So for this one, for 9.0.1.3 to 11, you can utilize the KYR tool. I have a link to that tool here. It's all command line interface, just copying and pasting essentially where your different parts of your certificate is with the command, putting it in there, and then you get your KYR tools. It's pretty straightforward to use once you know all the commands, and then all you have to do is really change the path of where they're in, and of course change the password that you want to use for the .kyr. It's installed with Notes 11 out of the box, which is really nice. So if you have Notes 11, you'll be able to use it pretty easily. However, when you move on to Notes and Domino 12, switch to Certificate Manager because it's so much easier, and I'm going to explain why. Certificate Manager, no more .kyr. It can import whatever format you want, which is wonderful. It saves so much time. So if you have an IIS server that you need a .pfx key for, and you're like, oh no, now I have to figure out how to convert this key into a .kyr to put on my Domino server, you don't have to worry about that anymore. You can just import the files through this process. I have been informed by Thomas that this process has been updated as of 12.0.1. I just didn't have time to update the slide, so this will change in the future, but this is a fantastic process. Also, now Certificate Manager replicates domain-wide. So if you have all of your environment on Domino 12, then you can put it on one of your servers and it goes everywhere. It's great. That way you don't have to keep uploading them to every single server. It takes so much time. Just one and done. Fantastic. So let's talk about Let's Encrypt. Also, if anyone's wondering about the pictures, I just am really enjoying AI taking animals and putting them in really mundane situations. So I thought you all might enjoy that too. Spice it up a little. Let's Encrypt for Domino. So automated certificate management for Domino 10 and 11, two-part streamlined installation on OS and on the OS and Domino. So essentially for Let's Encrypt, you do have to install it on the OS as well as Domino, but it's pretty straightforward. It does support Linux and Windows. It requires a DSAPI filter entry on the internet site document to fully work. It does also require a program document and an HTTP restart to update the certificate chain. That's important to know because you don't want to set this up to happen at like 11 a.m. You know, you want this to happen sometime in the middle of the night when your users are no longer on the platform. There has been some Java errors that I've encountered that essentially whenever you try to do the update, if you notice that your certificate's about to expire, and when you try to update it, there's just a stream of errors. Restart usually fixes it. I have yet to see an instance where a restart hasn't really fixed those errors. You definitely want to test your connection when you're setting this up by putting it in staging first. This will allow you a lot more errors than if you were to immediately set it to production. So what that means is it'll give you a staging certificate query and chain that will allow you to have multiple failure attempts if, you know, port 80 isn't open, or if there's something else preventing the authentication from clearing. If you do this in production, you get like maybe 5 attempts, and you could get locked out for a couple minutes, couple hours, and then you are stuck waiting to do it all over again. Do be aware that if you get a successful staging authentication, it gives you a staging certificate, which is not going to do much for you and will cause errors. So make sure to then switch it to production and restart. Certificate manager. So the certificate manager is out of the box in Domino 12. So just 12.0, you get the certificate manager. It is something that you can just install from the command line. It's just a single line load cert manager. The DSAPI filter is also required, but it is no longer required once with 12.0.1. So if you're still on 12.0, you do have to place an entry, but after that, not a thing you have to worry about anymore. In order for it to renew itself and to keep itself going, you do have to put it in the server tasks. Make sure to put that. So if you're noticing that it's not, essentially every time you restart the server, if it's the cert manager task isn't loading, it's not going to keep your certificates updated. So you need to make sure it loads with the server. And again, it replicates domain wide, which is a huge deal. It saves a lot of time. And then TLS credentials cannot be exported except in certain cases. That is something I do want to talk about in future iterations of this slideshow, because again, this is something that I wanted to get a little more in depth and get some knowledge and experience on before I presented it to you. I just haven't quite had time to update those slides. And if you want to know this right now, the Domino V12 certificate management slides I linked at the end by Daniel Nash actually does kind of go over that. So you can go in there and get some really good information, because it goes a lot more in depth in certificate manager, where I'm just kind of giving an overview of information of what I've personally learned updating these certificates. Cipher security by Domino version. So this is essentially what I've learned over updating all of these is your Cipher list does not update with you until 12.0.2 and up, which is really cool. I'm really glad that they implemented that. But up until that point, you had to go into your your default web page or your internet site documents and update the ciphers to the latest manually. And that can catch some people in precarious situations of only really having the, or having the, not the latest ciphers supported or set up on your servers. And that can cause just security holes that we don't want. Fantastic free tool for testing your sites is SSL Labs. I use it quite frequently after I've updated a site, especially ones that are really like going through a security audit and really want to make sure that everything is pristine. It tests your certificate chain, it tests your, if TLS protocols are enabled, it tests your ciphers. It has handshake simulations, so you can, if you're having issues with, you know, it talking to a specific browser or something like that, it does go through and have simulations to test for different browser types. But be sure to check do not show results on the board if you do not want to show your website having a bad grade. You'll essentially, if you scroll down, there's a board below that will show all of the latest ones that have been scanned, and it will grade you best to worst, like a gaming board or something, you know, like on a foosball table. It'll say who's done the best and who's done the worst. And if you don't want your site on there, then check that box. So 9.0.1, if you are on this version of Domino, which I know some people still are, its support for TLS 1 when implemented is in FP3, so you'll definitely want to make sure that that is enabled. Domino 9.1, you can also disable TLS 1.0 support, which is really, really important. It is not a secure protocol anymore, so make sure to have that disabled. Otherwise, you're not going to get a good grade, and you're going to have a gaping hole in your security. So you want to be on TLS 1.2 if you're on this version, and make sure that's disabled. In 10.0.1 FixPack 4, we updated Cipher suites to include 2056. This is where the weaker ciphers I noticed were not really deprecated yet. So you'll want to go in and make sure that those are unchecked and you have the latest ciphers enabled to get yourself a good grade and stay in the good graces. 12.0.2, this is when the exciting stuff happens. Everything's deprecated that is risky. And so you can still go in and get rid of these weaker ciphers to get yourself a better grade. But at this point, you know, things are kind of done for you. Domino 12 also disables TLS 1 by default, so it's not something you really have to worry about. This is a good reason to get yourself more modernized if possible, because they are doing a lot of really, really good things with web security and cert manager and things like that in Domino 12 and above. It will make your life a lot easier if that's something that you can do. How to achieve an A+. So I was messing around with a lot of this and I kept only getting A's. And Darren actually mentioned this to me at the conference, so I added the slide, that have you scrolled down and checked your HSTS settings. So it will show that you do have strict transport security enabled because that is set up by default now, but you will usually get a too short warning. And what that means is essentially this increases the age of which your server is like, okay, you have to connect via HTTPS to this server. And this is how long you can connect forward via that connection. And if it's too short, then it can cause some man-in-the-middle attacks and downgrade attacks and cookie hijacking and all that nasty stuff that we don't want to deal with. You also want to make sure that you have your subdomains protected with this as well. So by adding this notes INI setting and including subdomains, you should get an A+ and keep your web users a lot safer. If you want more information on the settings, I linked Darren's blog because he's the one who told me about it, so I want to give him credit. But also, yeah, I didn't have a but also. Don't know why I said that. TLS 1.3 is not supported yet. It has been out since 2018. It is in the roadmap, but if it's something that you're really passionate about wanting to get sooner rather than later, that is the QR code to go to the AHA and up that. But it is on the roadmap, so it is being implemented at some point down the line in Domino. Bonus tips. These are just extra things that I've experienced that you might encounter. So when I was starting to work at Domino, I would have found like kind of these items really useful out in the internet to find to help fix a lot of issues that I was like one-off issues or things that I encountered on a regular basis. And so I'm going to bring them to you. So this one actually happened right before CollabSphere. I was cleaning up some ciphers for a user and I got everything cleaned up and I was like, okay, we're good to go. I restarted HTTP and then all of these invalid ciphers kept showing up, but I had cleaned them all out of the internet site documents. So I'm just like, okay, what is happening? Where could this possibly be? And then I remembered hidden views. So if you had previously used the web configuration docs instead of internet site documents, there is a setting under the current server documents where you set these ciphers. So if you go under ports and then internet ports, it will only show if you disable your internet site documents. Now, to note, you can see this by selecting disable, but you do not have to save this setting. So you do not actually have to save it, restart it, or anything. You don't have to break anything essentially to see if this is your problem. So I went in and I set everything to be the correct and most up-to-date ciphers, saved it, and everything is a-okay. So if you're going in and kind of doing this to your own site and you see these rogue ciphers and you're like, where is this coming from? It might be a hidden view in your server document that you need to clean up from ages past. Cipher's not updating after you update Domino. So if you update from, say 9 to 12, but you're not seeing the new Cipher list, you're not seeing those fancy updated ciphers that you want to see, this is something that my colleague saw. So the Domino version under the configuration all documents is going to be sitting next to your Domino server. So check that first and make sure it also shows the release that you just updated to. Does it show Domino 12.0.2 or does it still show an old version? If it does, then you need to check out and update maybe the administrator server on the names.nsf and restart the server, because the administrator server, upon a restart, runs a process that updates that field, and that can cause some issues when you're trying to update your server and update these ciphers. Also, be sure to refresh the design template of name.nsf as well when you're doing such a big update, because that can cause some issues. Port 80 error. So you get in, you have Cert Manager, you're so excited to get this going, but it keeps telling you that port 80 is not open, but it is open, but it's not open. These are a couple things you can check that will cause issues with it refreshing or just starting to get it set up. So if you're redirecting traffic to port 443, that is not port 80 and can cause issues. Also, having anonymous access enabled can cause that issue. You can work around it by adding this notes INI item at the bottom. That will allow you to have anonymous access set to no and still have this automatically update. Also redirecting TCP to TLS will do that as well, because again, it's redirecting to a different port. So therefore, you don't have port 80 inbound connection to get this set up and or renewed. So utilizing a purchased SSL key for Nomad, this is just a little tip that I found when I was installing Nomad for the first time for a customer who has like a wildcard certificate that they created. HCL Nomad can be solved directly on Domino as of 12.0.1 fixback 1. Very exciting. It's really useful, especially to get those older apps that you have onto a web browser so people can still keep using them and not be tied to a client if they don't want to be. During the initial setup, essentially it will look for nomad.yourdomain.com. And if it doesn't see it, then it's going to look it will look in Cert Manager for this entry. If it doesn't see Cert Manager, it will make Cert Manager. If it doesn't see it inside Cert Manager, it will make an entry itself and it will create a key, which is very kind of it, but you want to use your own key. So instead of going in and deleting that and recreating it, and reinstalling or resetting everything up, all I do is I create what it's looking for before I install it. So I create nomad.mydomain.com. I put in the cert that I've created, the wildcard certificate, and then I proceed with the installation. And that just saves you a couple steps. So that's really all this is. Cipher's not updating after an HTTP restart. So again, you went through, you clean everything up, you're trying to get that A+, or you're trying to get everything secure to show your boss or the security audit that your site is safe, but it's not updating and you can't figure out why. Do you have a proxy or a pass-through server that might be in front of your website? Definitely check those first. I had this happen where I was banging my head on this with another administrator. We couldn't figure out why it wasn't updating. Then we realized that Nginx was actually handling the ciphers and the certificate and not Domino. And so once we updated Nginx, everything looked great. So just a little tip, hopefully to save you some time. Certificate manager renewal deterred by redirect. So this is something that I've had happen in a few situations where like there's a list of 20 redirect rules underneath the site you want to work on or want to get secured via Cert Manager. Just a really, really quick way to get it set up or get it renewed if you don't really have time or can't change those redirect rules right now to figure out which one is preventing it, is just temporarily disabling internet site documents. Again, this is just a quick and dirty thing if you just need this done right now and you can't take the time to figure out which redirects are breaking the renewal chain. And this is also when you are requiring port 80 to do this, to do the validation. And this is my bonus tip that Graham is really excited about. So this is one that I think I learned when IBM still had Domino. And if y'all remember when the support centers were in Texas and Colorado, one of the people I was complaining about, hitting Control V and it deleting everything I had just entered for a load convert command or something like that. I'm like, gosh darn it. I couldn't remember how to spell their name and I wanted to copy and paste it in and it deleted everything. And they're like, well, if you just right click and paste, it'll append it at the end instead of deleting everything. And I was like, no, I did not know that. And I assumed it was common knowledge until I blew a couple more like veteran Domino administrators' minds away. And now I'm like, all right, I just need to send it to the masses. So there you go. If you have a mail file with a really complex username or something along those lines, or you just don't feel like typing that day, don't fret. You can still append it at the end instead of having to do the entire command all over again. And that is the end.
Sorry, I was still on mute there.
It's all right.
Excellent, thank you. Let me share my screen. And let's go back to the presentation. There we go. Whoops, back to there. Okay. Okay, I think we're good here. So questions, we've got a couple of questions here, but I will remind everybody that in the Q&A section here, you can jump into the GoToWebinar control panel and pop in your question, and we'll handle them here as we go along. Yeah, the right-click paste. So I think most people here know, but if you don't, I am not an admin. I'm perhaps at best half-blood or less admin. And interestingly enough, just from a project that I've been working on recently, have had to do a lot of commands through Domino console and the Domino administrator. And so when Avery shared that at Collabsphere, I was ecstatic. So yeah, that's a great tip. Okay, so our first question. By the way, well done for a first-time presenter. And again, yes, that was a kind of a last-minute shift that we had to do because the person that we had lined up for September wasn't able to do the presentation at this time slot. So number one, Avery, thank you very much for doing the quick pivot there and running through this. You did a great job for your first OpenNTF webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, first question. Which is the best way to provide safe links and same time with certificates automatically? Ooh, we're getting a little bit outside there, but do you want to try that one?
Same time and safe links automatically. That's something I can answer later. We do have some methods to do that. It is a, yeah, I can answer that later. It's not something I have a reticent answer right now though.
Okay, so a slightly more involved process. Okay, so we can get that one posted up after the fact.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It's just not one I'm prepared to answer off the top of my head intelligently.
Sure. Okay, cool.
For same time, I can try to help. There's a settings that allows you to use Let's Encrypt if you use it automatically. It's a bit broken in 12.01. Hopefully it's going to be fixed in 12.02, but in the next webinar, same time, Our two speakers will tell you how to fix it in their presentation. There's a way to fix this bug and have Let's Encrypt generate automatically the certificates for you for SIM.
And as it turns out, our presenter from our next webinar, Eric, is on this webinar right now and just chimed in and said with regards to same time 12, it has built-in support for Let's Encrypt on Docker, and you'd use Cert Manager on Kubernetes. So a reminder for everybody that has those kind of questions to join us next month for our next webinar. Okay, next question. Oh, by the way, Jesse just piped in and said he's been monitoring Discord, and Dave Kern, who is the HCL resident paranoid from a security perspective, has been chiming in with some tidbits on Discord too. So for anybody that has yet to join the Discord server, there's more motivation for you to jump over there and get in on the admin forum for more tips. All right, Mike is asking, you mentioned SSLs might need to be updated every 90 days. When are we going to hear more about this? Is it a decision coming soon?
That's a hard one for me to answer because it's pretty much up to when Google decides to strong arm everyone else into doing it. They were talking about trying to do it by the end of 2024. And so that's kind of the downside to essentially 3 people owning all of our web browsers, or the most popular web browsers, is if they decide they want to change security within those web browsers to only accept 90-day certificates, everyone else has to follow suit. So that's something we will keep an eye and ear on, and I'm sure we will be very loud about in the OpenNTF Discord when that's actually a for sure thing. It's something they're talking about wanting to do. It's not something that they've actually said they are 100% going to do, but it's probably smart to start thinking about your security and SSL implementation as that being a high possibility, because as we saw, when the 1-year certificate vote failed, Apple did it anyway, and everyone had to follow suit.
Yeah. Okay, we have a question from Quinn here, which I think is going to be a clarification question. Do we need to identify the KYR file name in Cert Manager?
Nope, you don't use those anymore. They're not a thing. The certificate is stored in memory. And it's no longer a .kyr format, which is really cool. It's that, and I realized that was confusing. It was kind of to cover both like the Let's Encrypt variant for Domino 11 more.
Right. And for questions about Cert Manager, Daniel Nashed, who authored Cert Manager, has done an OpenNTF webinar earlier this year. So if you go to the webinars page on the OpenNTF website, you'll see the link to the YouTube presentation for that webinar. And he gets really, really geeky and gives all kinds of wonderful detail on how to use Cert Manager. And I used that webinar when I set up Cert Manager for myself, and it was really, really useful. So would encourage people to head in there.
I think I have that appended to mine as well, because I used it as a lot of reference for mine. Because again, this is just kind of a general, like, you need an SSL key, what do you do, as opposed to a deep dive in any particular answer.
Awesome. Okay, next question. Does Cert Manager support Traveler?
The Cert Manager, yes.
Excellent. Okay, version 12 using certificate store, the best way to renew your annual certificate.
The best way to renew your, so is this a paid certificate, or I'm assuming? So I honestly make it into a .pim format, and really creating a .pim key is as easy as opening them in a notepad and copying and pasting the key inside your certificate, the .key, and your intermediate certs. And you can find the format for that anywhere. It's also in the slides. I just didn't go over it as heavily. You save that and then append .pim at the end, and you can upload that to Cert Manager.
Yeah, and if you're using Cert Manager and you're using Let's Encrypt, it's automatic, right? You don't have to do anything.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. A question from Mike. It was claimed that the certificates are domain wide. How does Cert Manager manage different certs for different websites / services across various servers? Can you manage a scenario that would use different certs or KYRs on the same server? Maybe let's ask the first question first. So certificates are domain wide. How does Cert Manager manage different certs for different websites and services across various servers?
So essentially, Cert Manager, whatever one you install it on, that is the primary server. It has all of the encrypted information inside, like the .key and things like that. And again, this is a very generalized explanation. If you want a more in-depth explanation, check Daniel Nashed slideshow. There it is. But for this, essentially you have one central server. So if you have your like mail server or your application server be where you install Cert Manager, that's where you would update your certificates. For every other server, when you do load Cert Manager, it's going to search your entire Domino domain and be like, is this installed anywhere else? If it is, it's going to replicate it over. And by doing that, if you have that key set up on that central server, it will also replicate that information over as well.
Okay, and Mike, I'm going to ask you to clarify your second question where you say, can you manage a scenario that would use different certs and keys on the same server? Do you mean different subdomains?
Or just different domains? Like, do you have several websites that you want to secure? If so, yeah, you would have a different entry for each one.
Yeah, okay, so different domains on the same server, yes.
Yeah, good. So you can make a ton of entries with different domains and have that all either use Cert Manager, auto renewal, or have your own certificates that you update yourself.
Here's a good question from David. Can Cert Manager interface to on-prem CA tools such as Venafi?
That is something I do not know.
Okay, we can get an answer.
It's not something I've played with.
Yeah. Okay, that's what we've got for questions at this point. If anybody has any quick ones to chime in there, please do. The other thing that I wanted to mention, I've used in the past, actually, you know what? I'll pause on that comment. I had another reminder that HCL support is ending for Domino 9 and Domino 10 in less than a year, June 1st, 2024. So from an overall, what servers have you got running in your environment? If there was motivation to get to V12 to use Cert Manager, this was very helpful to influence that, but also those servers are going out of support. So you are encouraged to get to V11 or V12 sooner rather than later. The second comment that I wanted to make is, and this is widely available, I think, if not, I'll find it and post it into the admin chat, but Gabriella Davis has a blog post from many years ago about going through the KYR tool process and step by step. I'm sure it's more or less synonymous with the link that you shared, Avery, with respect to the HCL documentation on how to use the KYR tool, but that's something else that is a resource that was shared with the community. Okay, I don't see any other questions, so we will wrap it up there, short and sweet. I know you were obviously repurposing the slides from Collabsphere, which is fantastic, and the Collabsphere time slots were shorter than the normal OpenNTF webinars, but that's not a problem at all. That was great. Thanks very much. Again, first time presenter and well done. And I wish everybody a pleasant rest of your day. Again, jump over to Discord if you have other questions, and we'll see you over there. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.